Hello and welcome to TEDxUniversity of Johannesburg 2020. I'm Karen Katz. TEDx is the place where we bring together some of the brightest minds to entertain and to stir, to inspire and to inform. 3 words: ideas, worth, spreading. And this year's theme, dynamically shaping the future. What today is an abstract idea, a rumination, a conversation, become the seeds that grow into the future. And what will this future look like? Which ideas will take root? How will we answer the many questions that beset us? Well, this is the puzzle that our speakers attempt to conjure the possibilities to. And this future starts now, right here in the present moment, in our own bodies. I work with something called the Alexander Technique. It is a way of cultivating mindful attention so that you can do whatever you're doing with more lightness and ease. It is a study in readiness, in wholeness, in presence. And I'd like to share some of these ideas with you now. So 3 questions just to let in. Are you breathing easily right now? Are you balancing upward? Are you seeing around? Right now, can you ease your body while paying attention to the screen? Can you soften your eyes without losing connection? For a moment, just take an inventory of how you are in relation to the chair or the floor. Are you tensing where you perhaps don't need to be? Are you off balance? And maybe right now you can just distribute your weight a little bit more evenly. Are your shoulders scrunching and holding? And can you right now just let them go? Take a moment to soften your jaw. Let your eyes take in peripheral vision and a soft breath in and out. And with this, I'd like to welcome our first speaker, John Sanei. He is a knowledge mercenary. He travels the globe looking for the lessons that help uplift communities and encourage humanity to thrive. He talks about moving into the future in a dynamic, in a conscious, in a deliberate, in an elegant way. And he is a bit of a rock star. So I'd like to welcome our first speaker. Over to you, John.
Welcome to the future, where all our dreams become a reality, but so do all our nightmares. We've seen an incredible upheaval from every level of society, whether it's in our personal characteristics that have come to the surface and the trauma we've had to deal with, or within our relationships with our loved ones, or in a societal manner, and even to a socio-economic process. We are seeing a collapse of everyday life as we knew it. We are also seeing that many people want to go back to some level of normality. And that idea of normality is what I want us to think about. Because remember that normal, the thing that we're craving, had many of us at the brink of exhaustion, had many of us anxious all the time, chasing the elusive goal of more. And also we must remember that the case in point of normal is just a story that we have been told about ourselves by families, societies, and educational systems that have been handed down to us to make us think that this is normal. Running from pillar to post in anxiousness, trying to achieve this ideology of success. And we all know now that that really wasn't something we could ever arrive at. And what we have to do is rethink the story, rethink our perspective, so that we can come into this new world with a new dynamic perspective that gives us an opportunity to not only survive, but thrive. And we must also realize is that we are in a huge cycle as humanity. There's a great book from the 1990s called The Fourth Turning. And what they do in the book is they explain that humanity goes through 4 stages: a spring, a summer, an autumn, and a winter. And the last time we went through something like this was back in World War II. And at the end of World War II, we had the birth, or the spring, of the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations, and a whole lot of other structures that got society to build to where it is now. But unfortunately, we are in a winter again, and we are seeing the death of old structures, old ideas, and old ways of doing things. It's almost as if the younger generation is squeezing the older generation out. And if you just think about it, if you are living at home with multiple generations inside the home, there would always be friction between the way the older people wanted to do things and the way the younger people wanted to do things. And so here we are at the end of an 80-year cycle. And they say that the cycle will only really end by 2026 to 2028. So we still have another good 5 or 6 years of this winter to get through. And this is important because what we have to do is get a broad perspective of where we are. And if we are in a winter, the best thing we can do is dress warmly. And so what does it mean to dress warmly? It means that we must be okay with transformation. We must be okay with change. We must be okay of letting go of our stories. And if we just think about transformation, it always has 3 stages. It has the goodbye stage, where you have to let go of what you are familiar with, what you were used to, even if that story was kind of abusive, but you still have to say goodbye to it. And that always is sad or angry that you have to let go of any familiarity. The second part of a transformation is no man's land, where nothing looks familiar, everything is new, you feel exhausted because you have to keep reconnecting different parts of your brain to make sense of things. And then the third phase of a transformation is when you find your new groove, your new momentum, your new rituals and behaviors to start building towards this new world. We are squarely in no man's land. Everything is unfamiliar. Nothing is like it used to be. And so we have to realize that resilience becomes an incredibly important part of how we go through transformations. And resilience isn't something about doing what you always did, but just pushing through it. But we need to be resilient in responding, recovering, and reimagining. They're all very different types of resilience. And I think the worst thing we could do was be strong and resilient in trying to hold the whole old world together while this new world was being birthed. And so we must realize that the skill sets that we required to thrive in this old world are not the same as the skill sets we need in this new world, in this new multi-dynamic, multifaceted, quantum world that we are moving into. You see, the old world we come from was very much the story of the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution was all about efficiency, productivity, and the ability to create profitability for our shareholders. But today, as we move into this new dynamic world, this linear world is gone. The need for efficiency is secondary to being robust. You see, there's this idea around complicated worlds and complex ones. And the world we come from is a complicated one, meaning that there were intricate patterns that could and were repeated. In a complex world, you have intricate patterns that are not repeated. And so you could utilize mathematics and automation to get yourself out of a pattern process called the complicated world. But now we move into this complex world, you can't use the same tools to preempt and predict what the future could look like. And so if you can't preempt and predict what the future will look like, the only thing you can do is manage your behavior. And so what does our behavior have to be? And what do we have to do to show up into this new world in a new dynamic way? Well, the first thing we have to do is heal our memories, heal our past, and stop any expectations of what the future could look like. You see, they've recently proven that 50% of our memories are false. And this is a science-based study that they had. And it's not so much that we have to figure out which memories of ours are false or not, but we have to realize that the memories that make us sad, angry, and resentful are just creating more patterns and expectations and projections into the future. And so the irony is the best way to prepare for the future is to heal your past. And when you get to heal your past, you almost start on a clean base, almost like you've really starting to see the world afresh. The second thing we need to do is we need to become adaptable, agile, flexible, forever learners, optimistic, all in one go. Meaning that when we lose our expectations of what the future must look like based on our pasts, and we start making decisions with our curiosity, our excitement, and our humanness, we naturally become adaptable, flexible, and optimistic into this new world. And so it's not about throwing away everything you knew from the past. It's much more about engaging with it in a new way in this new world. You see, all death and destruction always have a rebirth. They always have a new awakening that starts to happen. And the rebirth that we are going to start seeing over the next 6 to 8 years is very similar to the Italian Renaissance. You see, back in the 14th century, they had something called the Black Death. And the Black Death devastated most of Europe. And because of that devastation, it ended their feudalism markets, which is their capitalism of the day. It ended that. It saw an acceleration of new technological know-how that was spread amongst the people. It showed us that you could teach more people about more technical things in agriculture and all sorts of different things, which then raised the middle class, and we started to see a brand new system come into play. But we also started to see the rise of the Italian Renaissance, post the death of Black Death. And in this new Italian Renaissance, what we did was we celebrated beauty, knowledge, and art for the very first time. And where we are today is the death of the old world. And the old world wanted us all to fit in to a machine, a production line, a corporate ladder that was designed by the Industrial Revolution. And as we start to see that demise, the new Renaissance will be about us, human beings, awakening, celebrating our uniqueness, our authenticity, and the way we bring impact to the world. And we must realize that for the longest time, our options of what we were able to do were limited to our exposure of what we thought was available. I mean, think about it. If you grew up in a family where your mother was a teacher and your father was a doctor, or your uncle was an accountant and your auntie was a director of a company, you would only think about those certain careers to think about. Or you could have had your friend whose parents were another 1 or 2 careers, but in fact, none of us are really exposed to that many career options. And when we did finish school, we were all given the same options of what to go and study at university. But you see, what's happened now is that the world we live in is a surplus society. In other words, we have a surplus of fantastic engineers, a surplus of fantastic accountants, a surplus of amazing doctors. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of these things, but we must also realize when something becomes a surplus, it just means that now you're commoditized, meaning that the price that you charge for your services or products is now going to be negotiable because there's 1,000 people behind you waiting to do that job for you. And so really we must realize that this new Renaissance is the awakening of our uniqueness and our authenticity. The world we live in right now doesn't need us to fit into any machine. It in fact asks us to be the machine. And the only way we can be the machine is by making sure that we are awakening what's inside us. I think it was Mark Twain who said, the 2 most important days of your life are when you're born and when you find out why. And our task in this Renaissance is to find out why. You need to be asking yourself, who am I? What am I here for? How do I combine my skill sets and what comes naturally to me? How do I combine my curiosity and my excitement and make it a business? Make it a way that I could add impact into the world. And of course, we live in the age of the internet. You can access 5 billion people around the world. All you have to do is get 0.00001% of them to pay you $1 a month, and you'll be living large. So understand, the world that we're moving into right now is not so much a complicated one, it's a complex one. The world we're moving into doesn't want us to fit into the machine, it wants us to become our own machine. The world we're moving into is not going to be stable or linear. It's going to be dynamic. multifaceted, and will need you to unlearn and relearn on a continuous basis. And if we adopt this mindset of anti-fragility, and this concept of fragility and anti-fragility is quite a simple one, comes from a New York Times bestseller called Anti-Fragile. What the concept is that if you're fragile and you drop, you break, you shatter. But if you're anti-fragile and you drop, you get stronger. So in other words, when we realize we're in winter, in other words, the cycle that we're in as humanity, when we realize we're in a transformation, when we realize we're leaving the old world and moving into a new world, we adopt a mindset that says, I'm anti-fragile. I'm ready for these challenges. I'm ready to unlearn, to relearn. I'm ready to bring my own curiosity and authenticity into this new world. And the question that most people ask me is, what sector will be really good so I can go and work in that sector? Or what should I study that's going to be popular in the future? And both those questions have got pure intention, but are fundamentally wrong. And the reason they're wrong is that you're predetermining the world to tell you how you will be successful, rather than you telling the world how you will add success to it. So as we move into this new renaissance, this rebirth, this spring, ask yourself a couple questions. Am I here to make maximum impact on the world? Am I here to follow what makes me most excited so I can bring that skill to the world? Or am I going to just hold on to my old stories? Am I going to hold on to old expectations, old pains, old bitterness, and then get upset with the world when it gives me what I've always expected it to give me? So we always have to start off with inner healing, then move into outer expansion. And if you can't combine these two, you'll find yourself highly accomplished, but never really reaching purpose. And this new world we're moving into is begging us to achieve inner wisdom so that we can bring it out into the world in the most dynamic, positive, and optimistic way. Ciao.
I'm inspired, I'm switched on, and I'm asking questions. Thanks so much, John. If you want to know more, go find him online. He freely shares his knowledge and insights. Our next speaker, Mike Teke. He is one of South Africa's most sophisticated and experienced mining executives. He leads international corporations, and he is driven by the need to contribute towards a more prosperous future for all South Africans. He's also got an amazing, inspiring personal story, some of which he's going to share with us this evening. So I look so forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you, and over to you, Mr. Teke.
The University of Johannesburg has a great vision, and we talk about an international university of choice anchored in Africa and dynamically shaping the future. When I talk about dynamically shaping the future, I therefore talk about dynamically shaping the future through real parenting. Real parenting. I was raised in a township called Guatema in Springs, raised by a grandmother who was a matriarch in the Teke family. My grandmother was blessed with 10 children, and one of those was my mother. I never spent time with my mother because my mother worked as a domestic worker. She was blessed with 4 children, and I'm the last one of the 4. Being the last one of the 4, I never saw her, as I said. I saw her only on Saturday mornings, and on Sunday afternoon she would depart and go back to her workplace. It was one special day during the week when I came back from school and I opened my grandmother's bedroom door. When I encountered my mother, she was standing in the bedroom. She was thin, she had lost weight, she was not well, she was ill. And later that day, she was fetched by an ambulance. And that was the last time I saw my mother. My grandmother raised me. She was strong. She had an amazing, amazing ability to discipline us. It was myself and my cousins. We grew up under the rules of a disciplinarian. We enjoyed it. She was a decision maker. She taught me a simple lesson in life of being a first mover. She taught me a lesson of waking up early and ensuring that I take advantage of opportunities. At the age of 15, my grandmother died. And I was 15 years old, and I stayed with my uncle and my other siblings. Real parenting for me, it's not only about procreation. It's not about giving birth and having children only. One most important lesson is presence, being present, being there for your children. I made it my responsibility that when my two children, Wiganyo and Tsiamo, were born, I was in the maternity ward. I wanted to be present. And I've done my best to continue to be present in their lives. Now, when I talk about presence, I'm not talking about presence as in gifts. I'm talking about you being there as a parent. That's real parenting. Secondly, it's great to be eyeball to eyeball with your children. Make sure that you look at your children in the eye all the time and talk to them, offer them advice. Be that real parent. It is very, very important. Thirdly, as parents, if you are fortunate to be married as a husband and wife, as partners, make sure that you do your children a big favor and respect each other. Your children will realize that there's a healthy relationship at home and will grow comfortably understanding that the world is a better place when human beings respect each other. It is important to wear your heart on your sleeve for your children. It is very important. I always drive the principle that when you love your children, yes, there will be boundaries in loving your children, but make sure that the love you have for your children is the love that will make sure that it nurtures them, it builds them into better human beings. The biggest lesson for me I learned, I never had parents, as I said. I was raised by a grandmother who, in my view, represented a father and a mother because of her strength, because of the exemplary life that she gave to me. The big lesson for me is good citizenship. When you are a real parent, you are raising citizens. They must be good citizens who are going to contribute to the betterment of humanity. I've made it my life that I try my best to be a better citizen. I made it my life that my children, Wiganyo and Tsiam, are raised to be better citizens. It is my dream, it is my vision that to complement the University of Johannesburg vision of dynamically shaping the future, real parenting must play an important role. It is not only politicians or those leaders in the world who may fail the world, but it is us as parents who must make sure that we become exemplary and be real parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Teke. What an amazing story of overcoming personal triumph and using those lessons to cultivate a powerful future for yourself and those around you. Our next clip is by the artist Sanei Motao. And in this clip, you'll see the ubiquitous washing line front and center and the mask-clad artist exploring the tension between repetition, being in lockdown, and the need for creative freedom. This is a piece by the Pandemic Project, and you'll also hear the beautiful music of the UJ Choir. This is Sanei Motao.
Limitations on the number of passengers and stringent hygiene requirements, including that all passengers must wear a face mask. The public is encouraged to stay at home other than for essential personal movement, doing essential work, and work in sectors that are under controlled opening. People can exercise under strict public health conditions. That will be spelled out. All gatherings, apart from funerals, people can exercise under strict public health conditions.
Okay, up next is Martin Brown. He has changed the lives of many people all over the world. He himself has overcome insurmountable challenges, extracted those life lessons in order to live his life to the fullest. He is an entrepreneur, an inspiration, and our own. I always love hearing Martin Brown speak, and I look forward to hearing what he has for us this evening. Thank you. Over to you, Martin.
It has been 8,276 days since my personal lockdown started. 700 of those days I spent in a bed looking up at the ceiling in my own room. How does one recover from a situation like this? At the moment, we are all globally stuck in some form of lockdown. What I'd like to share with you today is how I made it through my own personal lockdown, how I not only survived, but thrived. December the 26th, 1997, I started to regain consciousness on a wooden jetty. As I looked towards my chest, I could see these pearly drops of water lying on my chest. But the thing is, I could not feel it. I was paralyzed, locked into my own body. I could not move a thing. As always these situations, I had a rent a crowd around me. But what was quite ironic was nobody in this crowd could save my life besides me. You see, I was a qualified paramedic. I was the one meant to save lives, not to be saved. So, how am I going to emerge from this? Am I going to emerge victoriously? Or I'm going to be a victim? Because that day, I not only lost my mobility, I lost my ability to generate an income. I lost my privacy. I lost who I am. We're probably all feeling like that today because we are placed in a lockdown, not because of our own doing. Well, finally, after about 3 years, we got enough money together to purchase an electric wheelchair. Before that, I was pushed around from room to room, and if I wanted to be outside, I had to ask somebody to push me outside. Still, even out of hospital, I was still in this form of lockdown. Well, the new wheelchair arrived. I was extremely excited. Finally, I could move around with a chin-operated power wheelchair that we had to import. I could do it. I could move around indoors and outdoors. I didn't have the help anymore. The chair arrived without batteries. Well, pretty useless for an electric wheelchair, I would say. And the chair was the incorrect seating. But that didn't stop me. You see, I got friends together to put in batteries in the wheelchair. And when I got in that wheelchair, I had the freedom. I could go out again. I was not locked down in a certain place. But due to the incorrect seating, I ended up back in bed for another 6 months, looking up at the ceiling. Looking down my room, there was it standing, my brand new ride, my freedom, my mobility. And I laid there and I wondered, if this happened to me, how many other people has this happened to? It's then when I got thinking, how am I going to drastically shape my future to emerge from this victoriously? How am I going to help other people so they do not have to experience what I'm experiencing? I went to the shops the other day, since we got allowed to go out these days, and you know what I saw? Was the lines of people all standing exactly 6 feet apart, everybody wearing face masks made of cloth. There was no interaction. There was no communication. Everybody was quiet. And I thought to myself, is this really the new normal that everybody is talking about? Because to me, seen from my perspective, that was normal. That was abnormal. Everybody quiet. We are social creatures. But who is going to create this new normal? We can't leave it to the devices of the world out there, or to this pandemic to predict what is the new normal going to be. It is up to us, up to the people that's been caught under this lockdown, to change. But before we can do this, we first have to change ourselves. Because truly, if you need to change the world, you need to start with yourself. Because that is where change starts. COVID has washed more than just the hands of this world. It has exposed the inequalities, the pain and suffering of humanity. But humanity as a whole, for the first time in its lifetime, experienced an unprecedented event that had a global impact on every single one of us. Never before have we had this opportunity to change the future for the better, where we as a global population need to overcome the greatest obstacle that all of us suffer from, and that is the way we think. You see, most of us have this victim mentality, and we can agree that all of us are suffering from it in some way or another, because we've been placed in a situation that we do not want to be in. This is disruptive change. I've watched the news and I've watched social media, as I'm sure many of you have, and what I've noticed is that there is an extreme amount of hatred out there. A lot of people are angry, a lot of people are fighting, short-tempered. We need to get rid of the way we think, the way of being a victim. Because once you're bound to a victim mentality, you're bound forever. You see, they maintain a constant victim identity and see life through victim-tinted glasses. We can't be forced to do this the rest of our lives. But there is a way to get out of this rut. I know, I've done it. I've been there. I've laid in bed, looked at the ceiling, and wondered, why me? What can I do to get rid of this? And the one thing that I did is I focused on how to change other people's lives. And that's what we need to do. You see, a victim mentality, the whole world is about them and their pain. But as soon as we change the way we think to changing other people's lives, to assisting them, the more the better we will feel. And by change and giving, I don't mean capital, money, or food. Maybe just a little bit of your time. Just lending an ear to somebody who wants to vent. That is so appreciated. What I did is I started a company 16 years ago when I realized that I couldn't find a wheelchair in my country that suited my needs. I thought, how many other people are suffering from the same thing? How many other people do not have a wheelchair that meets their needs? So I sat in front of my computer with a stick in my mouth and on my mouse, and I started to design the ultimate all-terrain 4x4 wheelchair. For the last 16 years, we've won over 9 entrepreneurial awards. I have served clients all over the globe. And a lot of times, I get asked by people, what inspires me? Well, I can give you a little example. Last night, I actually saw a few photos placed on social media by one of my customers who just received a new wheelchair. Well, it's just a wheelchair, you might think. But what was amazing in this picture was the first time in 10 years the wheelchair that I designed allowed this lady to stand up straight and look people in the eyes. Yes, it was a standing wheelchair. Just seeing that enjoyment in her eyes of something that I designed and her new freedom that she found, that is what inspires me. It's up to us to create the new normal. It's up to us to implement the change in other people's lives. The world we're seeing out there now is not a new normal. It is an abnormal. So everybody now watching this, staying at home in lockdown, change your victim mentality. Change it to caring, change it to giving, and just change somebody else's little life, just for once, and you'll immediately see the impact it has on your own life. This Black Swan event is an extrinsic factor, something we have absolutely no control over. But there are things that we can do There are things that are in our control. You see, we, as a global population, have the opportunity to emerge from this pandemic and dramatically shape the new future. We will never have this opportunity again, where we can correct the wrongs of the past and move forward. We need to learn from history so that we are not doomed to repeat it again. We are the ones that are going to create a new normal, not governments. There are not other people that are going to come and dictate our lives. It's all up to us this time. Let our children admire our tenacity when we had absolutely nothing. And let the future admire our willpower when we have absolutely everything again. So I ask you this: how are you going to emerge from this pandemic, from this lockdown? Will you become a victim and stay a victim, or will you emerge victoriously? I'm Martin Brown, and I thank you for your time.
TEDxUJ welcomes Tumi Rabanye, a UJ alumnus and a CEO at the Brave Group. She talks to us about the key moments in her life that led her to where she is today. She says there is only one of you, so why not be the fullest, best version of you that there is? I look forward to hearing what she has to say. Thank you. Over to you, Tumi.
I'm a passionate thinker that works in the marketing and communications industry. I am myself a woman trying to fashion a future for herself in a very uncertain world. I am also a mother responsible for curating the life of my 6-year-old daughter in such a way that she's able to imagine a future for herself. I therefore draw from this self that needs to remain whole in order to pour into another life that has runway ahead of it. I was raised in a society whose intention by the apartheid government of South Africa was actually isolation, division, and suppression. I was raised in the homelands of South Africa, referred to commonly as Bantustan. The portion, 30% of land in South Africa, created along ethnic and tribal lines for Black people that so desired to go and thrive there and nowhere else. It was a pseudo-free society, pseudo-sovereign type of society, living off the economic lifeline of apartheid South Africa. An interesting dynamic, though, within that society is in its smallness, in its containedness. There was almost an incubator of multiculturalism and dynamism as one was surrounded by access to broadcasting, to authors and artists that were within walking distance, which were part of our community, that helped fashion the possibility that one could also, if only given the chance, could make it too. Now, I liken the experience of growing up in a Bantustan through the intention of apartheid as what it's like to survive lockdown regulations and COVID-19. Please understand, the intentions of the lockdown regulations are very, very different from those of the nefarious intentions of the apartheid state through Bantustan. However, I'm finding that my soul's desire to seek more, to do more, and to break the physical confinement is exactly similar to what I employed during my upbringing. I'm not taking this posture as some kind of pseudo-activist. I'm not taking a political stance. But the objective of my talk is actually to draw attention to the irrepressible nature of humanity and the desire for more, despite the circumstances that they are born in, or they are raised in, or they are limited to. I think about this because it is a valuable analogy for the psychological impact I found, at least in myself, of lockdown. What I found is myself tapping into the same drive and the same desire for connectedness that I had even when I was limited to a small town, as what I did after the announcement of lockdown. However, I also found a deep desire to open the boundaries and my barriers and actually understand what other people, other than myself, in different settings and different situations were undergoing. I may also be speaking from a position of relative privilege because internet connection and data were the least of my issues. I found, due to COVID-19 and the regulations that locked me to a physical destination, a physical place and a location that I had to observe. It was mandatory because survival depended on it. I worked even harder than what I probably would have had I had the physical means to find other people, to find connection, and to get to know what other people are going through. I found that I traveled more during COVID-19 and the lockdown situation than I would have had I had the physical means. Because in reality, I may not actually have had the financial means to travel as vastly as I desired. So I went to Italy. I went to the Duomo and I listened to Andrea Bocelli. I invited friends across the global community into my world, and we enjoyed the jazz sounds of South Africa through the virtual concerts that we had. I was more deliberate in exploring art and the various art exhibitions in the world. I was more connected and deliberate in listening and observing and reading to and engaging with my 6-year-old child, as it was just the two of us in the house. And she was also confined to online schooling. What is this? What is this a demonstration of, you may ask? I think there is something in the circumstances that we are in, where fear is brought to the fore, and we are inundated with negative news, negative press about where the world is going, and the sense of gloom that, at least in my spirit, kindled a rebellion. It kindled a rebellion in spirit against the pessimism that I was facing, and it galvanized in me a courage and a greater will to live. I was more driven to live during the pandemic time than I may have taken for granted when everything was accessible and available to me. In any sort of lockdown situation, driven by fear, courage is called to the fore. And when we think about courage, we think about big deeds. We think about these major actions. We think about bravado. No, I'm not referring to that. I mean the small and subtle actions of willing yourself to wake up just today and do what you need to do just today to allow yourself to get to the next. In COVID-19 times, what I found is courage for me involved the vulnerability to shed a tear in front of my loved ones as I commiserated via virtual funerals with people I cared for. And after that, allowing myself to get back to my original happy setting. I found that courage was the ability to acknowledge the fear that I felt in the moment as someone that depends on income that involves connecting with people where I'm forced to disconnect. I found the courage was acknowledging the fear, letting it pass, and getting to the next side. I found that courage was facing my child, who was feeling stressed and confined and limited. and finding the time in my schedule to just take a walk in the garden with her. And even say to her, my baby, I don't know right now, but I trust that it will be okay. When is it going to end? I've often had to say, I'm not certain just yet. But what I know is that we will be okay. I found myself having to face the reality of undergoing a test because it felt to me like I was experiencing the symptoms, and surrendering myself to the process with a latent fear around what would happen to my child hereafter. Now, if I go back to the origins of my upbringing and being locked in a small community, a physical location whose mindset was supposed to be the full parameters of my destiny, I'm finding that the same energy that I used to spring myself into action and imagine a life beyond what was sitting in front of me is what I am using right now to get me through. How is this important for dynamically shaping the future? I would argue that as we are, as practitioners of daily courage, we are the means and we are the tools that are going to dynamically shape the future. That the job of imagining a post-pandemic world resides first and foremost with us, writing the rule books as we see them for ourselves moving forward. The next step after that is taking those same rule books that we have written for ourselves and actually having the temerity to reach out into the world and find like minds and connect with them. Because I have learned through COVID-19 that as isolated as I have felt in my lockdown, there's a whole world of others just like me. And just because I'm not able to physically walk to them due to the limitation in movement does not mean I am not able to access them. And in fact, with the means that I do have, even if it is virtual, it is in me to infuse a sense of humanity in the way that I use the technology before me. I am able to virtually connect, and that is not any less of a connection. It is the means that I have in the time that I have. I'm finding that I'm inspired to take that and infuse it into my home to enable my own child to fathom a future for herself, where her physical limitations, her physical location do not determine the extent to which she's able to reach out into the world. In dynamically shaping the future, I think COVID-19 is compelling us to rise to the occasion of connecting and reconstructing our sense of the world in the comfort of our own home and acknowledging the discomfort of our feelings about what we have known before, but the opportunity is right in front of us to do it differently and to do more.
TEDx is a grassroots organization that's all about inspiring conversation within the community. Our next speaker, Femi Adebanji, is about to do just that. He has many years of experience as a business leader and within customer service strategy. Today, he talks to us about the wisdom you can derive from a taxi cab and more. He's a total interesting speaker and inspiration. Femi Adebanji.
My talk today is titled Be Distinct or Be Extinct, how we can take hold of our own future and shape our own futures. The fact is this, we live in a world of challenge and change and competition. We now live in a world where what worked yesterday might not work today and might be completely irrelevant tomorrow, especially in the times we find ourselves now. We live in a time where organizations and people and every single person on the planet have to ask themselves some very important questions, which are these. Firstly, what must we do to ensure that we survive and that we thrive? And secondly, who must we become to ensure that in the hearts and minds of our customers, our clients, and those that we serve, we remain distinct so that we don't become extinct? Here's the fact. I think our survival and our ability to thrive in a changing world, in a disruptive world, is driven by a number of factors. First of all, the extent to which we can actually adapt quickly, rapidly, and intelligently in a changing world. And secondly, the extent to which we can actually give excellence in every single thing that we do. And thirdly, the extent to which we can bring our customers and our clients to the very center of what we do and how we do what we do. We have to build our business and organizations around them and not the other way around. Let me share a story with you that illustrates this point. A few years ago, I was giving a talk in Cape Town for the airport company South Africa. I gave my talk, and after my talk, I was in my hotel room. While I was there, my cell phone rings. Bring, bring, I answer the phone. The guy on the other hand calls me and says, Mr. Adebanji. I said, yes. He says, this is Mohammed. I'm like, how's it, Mohammed? How are you doing? And I'm very well, thank you. And I'm thinking to myself, I have no idea who this guy is, right? Then he says to me, I'm your cab driver for tomorrow. I know your flight is at 10 o'clock tomorrow. You're leaving Cape Town at 10 o'clock tomorrow. What time shall I pick you up? So now I'm impressed and thinking to myself, wow, this is really impressive. This guy is calling me the day before my flight. So I said to him, I said, look, you're right. If you pick me up around, say, 8 o'clock tomorrow, does that work for you? He said, yes. Perfect. We agreed. 8 o'clock the next morning. The next morning, 8 o'clock sharp, Mohammed was at the hotel. He helps me. He takes my luggage, puts it in the boot of his car. He gets to the front to get in. I open the door at the back to get in. And as I open the passenger door of Mohammed's car, I see things I've never seen before in a cab, and my entire world began to unravel. What do I see in Mohammed's car? Well, I see 2 bottles of water, still and sparkling. Still water and sparkling water. I see some breath mints, some hand lotions. I see the Cape Times newspaper. I see a notepad. I see a very expensive looking pen. The pen is not exactly a Mont Blanc, but it's not a Fong Kong, or well, we call it Fong Kong here. It's not a cheap pen either, you know? It's kind of in between. So he's at the front, he's very relaxed and everything. So I'm a bit apprehensive because I've never seen these things in a cab before. Remember, it's a cab driver. So I sat very far away from the stuff. I kind of kept my distance from the stuff. I moved my thighs apart because I was kind of nervous. I don't want to be accused of pilfering or taking stuff that's not mine. So he saw the apprehensive look on my face through the rearview mirror. He turns around casually, looks at me and says, Mr. Adebanji, relax. You're in Cape Town. The paper's yours, the mint's yours, you know, the hand lotion is yours. He never mentioned the pen, so you understand what it means. Don't touch the pen, inverted commas. But the fact is, I still wasn't convinced. I was waiting for that 4-letter magic word. Mohammed looks at me again casually. He says, Mr. Adebanji, listen, you're in Cape Town, relax. It's on the house, it's free. Free, 4-letter magic word. I went, yes! Now, I didn't go yes in front of him in a scab, otherwise he'll throw me out, right? I went yes in my head because I'm thinking, this is unbelievable, right? So we're about to leave, and here's the thing. The story gets better. Just before we drive off, he looks at me again. He says, Mr. Adebanji, by the way, would you like the radio on or off? Or is there a specific kind of music that you like? Now, at this moment, I'm a bit apprehensive. I'm a bit suspicious because I'm thinking nobody is that good. This guy cannot be that good. It's impossible. In fact, I'm suspicious thinking I'm on a show, Africa's Funniest Home Videos, and they have cameras in there all looking at me and being streamed all over the world, and people are having a big laugh. So I said, well, you know what? Let me try this guy out just in case it's a gimmick of some sort. So I said to him, by the way, you know what? I like lounge music. I'm a big fan of lounge music, specifically Buddha Bar. He grabs his MP3 player, his iPod, he begins to scroll, you know, very casually. After about 30 seconds, he turns around, he looks at me, he says, Mr. Adebanji, unfortunately, I don't have Buddha Bar on the lounge music, but I do have Café Del Mar on the lounge music. How would that suit you? Ladies and gents, my jaw dropped. And I said to him, Mohammed, right now, I don't care if you play me marimba music or Scottish bagpipes. No offense, I love Scottish bagpipes and marimba music. But I said to him, I don't care what you play me right now, because what you have done is taking something as ordinary as a trip to the airport and made that extraordinary. What you have done is taking something as mundane as a trip to the airport and made that spectacular. We get to the airport, and I gave him a big, huge tip. And here's the point of my story. I asked him, I was curious, I asked him, I said, Mohammed, why have you gone through all this trouble, all this effort? I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, don't lower your standards now. When next I'm in Cape Town, I want to have the same experience. But why are we going through all this trouble? He looked at me dead in the eye. He said, Mr. Adebanji, it's very simple. The tourism industry in Cape Town is going through a lot of change, a lot of disruption, a lot of challenge. If I don't adapt to those changes, if I'm not agile and innovative in my environment, in my industry, I will be out on the street. If I don't build my business around my customers and bring my clients to the very center of what I do and how I do what I do, I will actually be unemployed. And if I don't deliver excellence and high performance in every single thing that I do, my family will be in trouble. Here's the reality. In the world that we find ourselves now, our survival and our ability to thrive is driven by the extent to which we build our business around our customers, we deliver excellence in all that we do, and we're willing to be adaptive and be agile quickly, rapidly, and intelligently in a changing world. You see, we live in a time of unprecedented change. We live in unprecedented times. There are no rule books for the times that we find ourselves in. But here's the truth, and also here's the sad reality. In the times that we find ourselves in, you will find organizations and individuals that will survive and those that will not. In the times that we find ourselves, the truth is you will find organizations and individuals that will thrive, and they will use this time as a launching pad for greater things. And on the flip side, there will be those that will not be able to survive and thrive. You'll find organizations and people that will be able to seize their future, take control of their future, shape their future in spite of the disruption and the difficulties that we experience right now, and those that will not. What this indicates is very simple. It's not the change or the disruption or the challenges or the problems that we'll face that define success or failure. Rather, it's our response in the face of our issues. It's our response in the face of our challenges. It's our response in the face of change and disruption. That is what ultimately defines our success or our failure. It's how we respond to these issues, in spite of how difficult they may be. Those are the factors that determine whether or not we can take hold of our own future and shape our own future. It's not the environment that matters. It's how we respond within the environment that matters. Let me share another story with you that illustrates this point. Some time ago, I was catching a flight from Johannesburg International Airport to Cape Town, and I had to use the gents, right? So I ran to the gents, used the gents, and standing by the door was the janitor in his outfit with the mop, looking very smart. As I run in to use the gents, he says, he's standing there, says to me, "Good day, sir. Welcome to my office. Have a nice day." Yeah, I was shocked as well. So I'm thinking, this guy can't be for real, right? It's impossible, you know? So he says to me, "Enjoy your stay in my office, sir." And I'm like, okay, cool. You know, I ran to the gents, did my thing. As I'm coming out, he says to me again, "Did you enjoy your stay in my office, sir? Is there anything else I can do for you?" I'm thinking, no way, man. This guy is kidding around. So I kind of forgot about it, ignored him, and went and caught my flight. Now, I'm on the road a lot, and I use the bathroom a lot before my flight, just to make sure there are no issues. And I began to watch this guy, and he was consistent. He said the same thing to every gentleman that came to the bathroom. He was courteous, and he gave them a good experience. "Good day, sir. Welcome to my office. Have a nice day." He even offered to give them the towel and the tissue, everything that they needed, even wipe their shoes if necessary. And I was really impressed, and I realized, now, this guy is the real deal. He's looking beyond the fact that he's a janitor. He's looking beyond his environment, and he's asking himself, how can I give 110% in spite of what I'm doing? And I watched him very closely, and I realized he was getting tipped $10, $20, $30. And I did a very simple, rudimentary math. And I said to myself, if he's getting paid $10 from 10 people a day, that is $100 a day. In a month, he's making easily between $2,500 to $3,000 every single month. For someone who cleans toilets for a living, that is a heck of a lot of money. And what has he done? He's looked beyond his environment and asked himself, how can I become adaptive and innovative and be agile and make myself distinct in the midst of my environment? He's looked beyond his environment and said, how can I bring those that I serve to the very center of what I'm doing and how I do what I do? He's looked beyond his environment and said to himself, how can I give excellence in every single thing that I do? And because of that, he was rewarded for it. In the world that we find ourselves now, The reality is very simple. Our ability to survive and to thrive is driven by our response. And it's how we respond that ultimately will drive our success and our failure. And it's how we respond that ultimately will equip us and allow us to shape and take hold of our own futures. We live in a world of challenge and change and competition. We live in a world where what worked yesterday might not work today and might be completely irrelevant tomorrow. We now live in a time in a world where organizations and people, every single person on this planet must ask themselves, number one, what must we do to ensure that we survive and thrive? And who must we become? And what must we do differently to ensure that in the hearts and minds of our clients and those that we serve, we are distinct so that we don't become extinct? These are the factors that will allow us, equip us, and position us to take hold of our future in spite of the disruption that's around us. And these are the factors that will allow us to be distinct so that we don't become extinct. Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the close of this evening, but we will be back tomorrow with part 2 and more inspiring humans to talk us through dynamically shaping the future. We hope you will join us and to see you there. And of course, to say goodnight in a dramatic Shakespearean fashion, I say goodnight. Good night, parting is such sweet sorrow, so I say good night until it be morrow. I'm Karen Katz. Thank you and good night.